Hi, I'm Rachel Rudolph, the Extension Vegetable Specialist at the University of Kentucky, and today we're going to talk about mustard cover crops. So this behind me is one planting date of a mustard cover crop trial. So we did 3 different planting dates for fall planting to try to evaluate biomass production, flowering, and just overall appearance and weed competition, those kind of things with our mustard cover crops. So we just don't know a lot about how they perform here in Kentucky. And so behind me are 6 different varieties of cover crops. Mustard cover crops have shown to be of interest to growers here. They have biofumigant properties. Some of them do, not all of them. And what I mean by biofumigant or biofumigation is basically you would grow a cover crop like a mustard that has a volatile gas compound that is released once you have chopped up the cover crop. So it's volatile, so you have to act kind of quickly, right? So you would come through, you would chop this up with a flail mower, incorporate it into moist soil, and those gases could suppress soil-borne disease, soil-borne pathogens, pests, plant parasitic nematodes. Even weed seeds can be affected by this. But again, not all mustards are created equal. Not all biofumigant crops are created equal. And so really we're just looking at from a production standpoint. We're not even evaluating the volatile gas component, the glucosinolate component of these crops yet. So behind me is Pacific Gold, White Gold, Trifecta Blend, Caliente 199, Caliente Rojo, and Nemat Arugula. And these were seeded, direct seeded at about 20 pounds per acre the early part of September. And so we're now into just about 2 months of production, and as you can see, we want them to get to flowering. That would be when the cover crop, when you would terminate these particular cover crops. And so as you can see, there's only a few flowering behind me, and we'll take a closer look here in a little bit. Okay, so here we're looking at Pacific Gold mustard. So this has been evaluated in other trials and other experiments. It seems to be doing relatively well here. Some of the plants are flowering, which is where you would want to think once the majority of the crop flowers, that's the time when you would want to terminate it. So you don't want to wait until there's significant seed production. You would not want this to become a weed in your field, but getting to the point of flowering, that's where you want. So mustards are part of the cole crop Brassicaceae family. So certainly you want to keep that in mind when adding this to your production system. You wouldn't want to follow a cole crop with this particular cover crop, right? Because they're related and there is disease potential there. So cover crops also have pests and disease issues. They're no different from any other plant. So as you can see here, we've got quite a bit of harlequin bug damage going on. They're chewing on the leaves, they're reproducing. They seem to be only on this particular cover crop, but it is something to keep in mind, right? You would not want to introduce a new pest into your production system or encourage that pest that's perhaps already there. You can see a lot of feeding has happened, and there's quite a few of them here. So doing some homework, doing some investigation on potential pest problems or disease problems that a cover crop may introduce or encourage in your production system is definitely important before implementing this unknown or unfamiliar cover crop into your system. So fun fact, cole crops, Brassicaceae, they are also called crucifers, right? And that is because of their flowers. So the 4 petals, right, make a cross, a crucifer, right, a crucifix, also known as a crucifix. So that is just a little fun fact about where that name comes from. They've got really beautiful flowers, yellow mustards, white mustards, brown mustards. Their flowers may be slightly different in color, but they're all considered crucifers. So part of growing a cover crop for most people is increasing soil organic matter. So biomass production of that cover crop is usually really important for people. So as you can see, we have various, across this trial, right, we have cover crops that are producing at various amounts. So here we have one that is short. This is an arugula cover crop. It's thick in here, but I'm skeptical that this particular cover crop would produce as much as some of the others. And so that's something to keep in mind. It's also needs to be seeded really thick. All of these need to be seeded pretty heavy in order to be competitive with weeds. That can also affect biomass production and just overall development. So something to keep in mind. What are your goals for cover cropping? The same goes if you're implementing a mustard cover crop. What do you want to accomplish? What are you trying to get at in your production system? Is biomass and soil organic matter, is that important? Or are you using this cover crop for other means? So this behind me is the second planting date. So these cover crops, the same ones in all 3 planting dates, these were planted, direct seeded, middle of August here in central Kentucky. And so as you can see, a lot of them are already flowering. So we've already collected the biomass data from these to estimate overall biomass production. But there's a few bees flying around behind me. It's about 50 degrees out here, so it's a bit chilly, and still they're really wonderful for pollinators. Potential benefit for growers who are interested in encouraging that sort of thing. But overall, this looks like it might be the most promising of the planting dates, the middle of August. This was terminated middle of October, or the data was collected middle of October. Our first planting date was seeded 1st of August, and that was terminated again 1st of October, and that ended up being quite, there was a lot of weed competition and not a lot of biomass production. So I think we found the happy medium here with our second planting date, but the data will show what actually happened, and we'll be able to share that with you soon. So things to keep in mind, biomass production, potential pest and pathogen suppression, certainly rotating appropriately as your farm allows, right? So not preceding or following another cole crop, as these are related. And there are potential drawbacks with pest pressure, but as you can see, there's some cute little honeybees out here still feeding. We're in early November and they're still pretty busy out here. So lots of things to keep in mind. Not every cover crop is going to work for your system, but just keeping things in mind and doing your homework beforehand and implementing it little by little is a smart way to introduce cover crops into your system.